All right. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday rolling out. And everyone watching out there. I am your host, Crystal Jordan. And you all may remember me from Rolling Out's reality check, but I'm super excited to be hosting a brand new edition from Rolling Out, which is titled the Sisters with Superpowers Book Club. We have an amazing program titled Sisters with Superpowers. And myself being an author, I'm so excited that we are extending Sisters with Superpowers, the program, to include authors. And myself being an author, my third book dropped on February 7th. So I'm super excited to have conversations with other authors, especially women of color that have something to bring to the table and a perspective that we can all appreciate and enjoy. So today's episode is going to be an amazing first kickoff for the Sisters with Superpowers book club. Trust me. My guest today is one face that you guys will definitely recognize from television. She is an award-winning ABC News journalist, a contributing anchor and reporter for the news magazine 2020, and she is also the network's senior affairs correspondent reporting on Good Morning America, World News Tonight with David Muir, and Nightline. As I said, this is a face we all recognize, one of our most celebrated and award-winning journalists, and she has a new book titled Lessons Learned and Cherished, The Teacher Who Changed My Life. Please help me welcome Deborah Roberts.
Hi, how are you, Crystal? Hi, everybody.
I am great. I am so excited. We are so excited to welcome you and for you to be our premier author for the Sisters with Superpowers book club. Thank you so much
Oh
for
my,
agreeing to do
and
this.
I have to tell you, I'm getting used to that title too, author. I'm a journalist. I've co-authored a book with my husband before, but my first solo outing. So I love hearing that title, author. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited. And when I saw this book, I was really excited for this to be our premiere one because I can tell you as an author myself, the two of the people that inspired me the most, right? And actually I dedicated my first book to them were my high school English teachers.
Yes.
I
Yes.
had a high school English teacher that taught English lit, Miss Alexander, and she pushed me so much. And also another literature teacher named Mr. Carl Williams, and
Ah,
he had probably one of the biggest impacts on encouraging me and really giving me the confidence to believe that I could be a writer. So
oh my gosh.
I'm so excited about this book.
Oh my gosh. And first of all, congratulations on your third book. Did not know you had a third one. So congrats. We're both kind of entering the sphere again for you at
Yes.
the same time. I have to tell you, your story just mirrors what I have heard anytime I mention a teacher. And I have to tell you, this book is, I mean, truly, it has been just a labor of love. I mean, you hear people say that about projects, but this truly was because it was almost serendipitous. You
Mhm.
know, I talk about my teacher and I posted about her on Instagram yesterday, talking about the fact that the book is coming out in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Mrs. Dorothy Hardy, my fifth grade English teacher. And often when I give speeches, when I'm talking about women and their powers, their superpowers, or just
Mhm.
empowering and growing in their careers, I talk about the inspiration of this teacher. And what I discovered over time is that after these conversations, people would come up and start sharing stories about their teachers. And as you remembered right away,
Mhm.
they will remember Mr. Carter, Miss Smith, Mr. Blanton. I mean, I just would hear these names, and people would just sort of go back into this nostalgic kind of place. And
Yes.
I thought, there is something here. And
Yes.
then, particularly over this last year, when we start, over the last couple of years, when we started seeing how teachers are just being so affected by not only the pandemic, but this world of ours and
Mhm.
fleeing the profession and feeling disrespected and disregarded, I
Mhm.
thought, you know what? It's time for a love letter to teachers
I
to
love it.
remind them of what they do. And that's what this book is all about.
Well, I love that. I have a lot of questions. You've kind of touched on a few things that I definitely want to bring up, but I love the fact that this is, your personal story is a big part of this, along with some other, very famous, very influential people are part of this book. But let's start with Miss Hardy, because for me, I know from my experience, I knew immediately when I got to college that Mr. Williams and Miss Alexander had prepared me. I recognized that
Mm,
immediately.
mm.
So I'm wondering, with you having a fifth grade teacher,
Yeah.
That influential teacher. When did you kind of realize and start to kind of connect the fact that Miss Hardy's, the seeds that she planted had taken root and, blossomed into this award-winning journalistic career you have?
I don't know that that was apparent right away. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that I had many teachers along the way, as many people can point to. So
Mhm.
I had teachers in high school. I had a Mr. Mann that I talk about, Mr. Griffin, my librarian, Mrs. Kathy Turner, who I just reunited with recently. And she had a big impact on me, not necessarily with academics, but with after school program. We used to do yoga together, and she got me sort of thinking about the broader world and travel. So I think it was sort of a combination of things. But
Mhm.
I think, and I don't know if it was in college or post college, but when I started my journalism career and I would have to write scripts, and I wasn't necessarily always the best writer, but I was a stickler for grammar. And I
Mhm.
was a stickler for, verb and subject agreement. And I was thinking, wait a second, this is Mrs. Hardy. And I would hear Mrs. Hardy in my mind talking about, how, we conjugate in our grammar. And that was, I think, once I embarked on my career, when I realized that foundation I got from a no nonsense English teacher who demanded excellence and
Mhm.
demanded that you step up to the game when it comes to speaking and writing. And I think over time I began to attribute it to her.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes sense because especially those teachers that give you a hard time are usually the
Exactly.
ones that have that lasting impact.
It's
So,
true.
this book again, Lessons Learned and Cherished, the teacher who changed my life. Now, in addition to your own story, you have Oprah Winfrey, Brooke
Uh,
Shields, Rachel Ray, I mean, Robin Roberts, so many different people.
Brooke Shields, Christy Turlington Burns. Yeah, Misty
Michael Strahan,
Copeland.
like
Yes,
the names on this book, Vanessa Williams, and I love
yes,
the fact that they're Misty Copeland from so
yes.
many different areas of life, but have careers that have been influenced by someone believing in them and by seeding into them. I think anyone that has accomplished anything
Yeah.
has that someone, someone or someone's in their life that contributed to it. But I'm wondering, is there one particular incident that kind of acted as the catalyst for you to sit down and actually start this book? Because you've done so much. You mentioned, co-writing a book with your husband, but what was it that created the moment that said, you know what, I want to take all these stories and put them together in a love letter, like you said, to teachers?
Well, I think that, and that's a very, very good question, because I've asked myself that, was there just the one moment? And I don't think there was one, but I do think that there was a pivotal time. And I think as a journalist over this last couple of years and reporting during the pandemic and reporting on voices and people who hadn't really necessarily been heard, all of us were made aware, right, of the job that teachers do. Parents were having to educate at home. We suddenly realized, oh my gosh, this is not so easy. And I was doing that with my son. So I think I was very, very pointedly aware of that as a journalist, and I wanted to report on that story a little bit. But I think what happened was it just organically rolled into something as I'm thinking about this. And I have some relatives who are teachers, but it's not like my mother was a teacher or my sister or best friend. But I just was sort of obviously very sympathetic to this issue. And when I started reading how teachers were just, the numbers of teachers fleeing the profession and just deciding to retire early, and they've had it and so forth. I thought, as a journalist, first of all, we need to highlight that story. But when
Mhm.
I started talking to my agent somehow about the idea that I might want to write a book, and I was kicking around other ideas that I thought would be interesting, but
Mhm.
somehow I mentioned my fifth grade teacher, and somebody said, wait a minute. Okay, let's think about the other stuff later, but I
Mhm.
like this idea. And then the more I started thinking about it, I thought it's timely. The publisher said, maybe we can write this for 2024. And I said, no, 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 no. This book can't wait for 2024. This
Yeah.
book has to come 2023. And
Mhm.
they said, well, this is really going to be a job. I said, I'm up to it because, I'm a journalist, right? Of course, I worried I bit off more than I could chew. But I said, no, no, no. I need to start reporting and doing this now. So
Mhm.
it was sort of a combination of, I think, my own nostalgic feelings,
Mhm.
having helped my son during this time,
Yes.
reading these stories, thinking about Mrs. Hardy. I just thought it's time for a book like this because I don't think I've seen one. So I guess I decided to fill a need.
Well, of course. Of course. And you know what? I didn't even think of it in terms of how parents
Mm,
started to feel, wait a minute.
yeah,
I appreciate my children's teachers even more because so many parents were overwhelmed,
yeah,
with their children when they were home during the pandemic and you were, trying to learn and learn along with them
Right.
because things change. So that's an interesting, perspective as well, because I think I will tell you, I taught school for one year.
That's all you did, huh? You couldn't make it through.
Not
Couldn't
my
make it through.
not my ministry, but I taught for one year, and I realized it actually made me a better parent.
Mm.
Because teachers, you don't there's one thing to being a parent, but we don't realize, I think, how much time teachers spend with our
Yes.
children, right?
Yes. Yeah, and how much they give to them, Crystal. And one of the things that I discovered, and we can talk about this later, but when I was talking to various people, whether it was Oprah, whether it was Bobby Brown, or whether it was Danielle Ballou, the chef, all of them talked about something that the teacher sort of poured into their soul. It
Mm,
wasn't about the academics necessarily. It wasn't about the spelling bee that they won or the test or the AP placement. It was
mhm,
about the teacher who came to them and provided something at a time that was critical for them,
mhm.
and that was what spurred them on, and that's what I think makes the teachers that we celebrate so great. It's not about like the day-to-day lessons, it's about the bigger pictures. They see something in us sometimes that we don't see in ourselves, and
Mhm.
that's what I want people to be reminded of.
Absolutely. Well, you all know we are here with the Sisters with Superpowers book club. This is our premiere event, and we are honored to have the award-winning journalist Deborah Roberts here with us with her second book. And it's funny because interviewing a journalist, they kind of tend to know the questions you're going to ask.
I know it's true.
So
Sorry.
you got me,
Sorry.
Deborah. Deborah got me. So my next question for you is, again, the list of people of importance, Rosie Perez, Lucy
Yeah.
Liu, Sunny Houston, Jenna Bush Hager, like Ava DuVernay,
Yes.
like she rose in my head. So many of these amazing influential people that have really contributed
Hmm.
to our culture in so many different beautiful ways. They are speaking about the lessons they learned from specific teachers,
Hmm.
and I'm wondering if you found a consistent theme
Yes.
through these
Yes.
stories, and can you
Yes.
share that with
Yes. There was a through line. In fact, Robin Roberts asked me that when we started talking. Robin was one of the very first people I mentioned this idea to. And I said, "What do you
us?
think?" And she said, "I think this sounds really cool. I think this really sounds good." She immediately started talking about, her teacher. What I found is essentially what I shared with you, which is that it was the teacher who saw something in these people. It wasn't necessarily just about, they don't remember, the subject matter really all of that much, but they remember what the teacher did for them and how they made them feel. Sergio Hudson, the designer, said that his teacher was somebody in fashion school. He was getting cocky. He thought he was so terrific. LaShawne's, the Broadway singer, said the same thing. She was getting very cocky, and they both had teachers that sort of like pulled them back from the brink, who essentially smacked their hands and said, "Are you
Mhm.
kidding me? You're not all that." And they really forced them to look at themselves differently and to improve their game and to add discipline into their lives.
Mhm.
Bobby Brown talks about learning outside of the classroom and learning how to be herself, because she had a teacher who was essentially a makeup artist who said, "Go and do you. Stop
Mhm.
trying to do other people." And,
Mhm.
Ava DuVernay said the same kind of thing. Oprah's story, of course, just grabs you. We've heard Oprah talk about Mrs. Duncan, but
Mhm.
she talks about how she was this little kid who had survived a difficult childhood and some family turmoil. But this teacher just really saw her and made her realize that she had something, that you
Right.
had something, that other people don't have. So that was the consistent thing. Robin Roberts talks about the sports, a teacher who basically also influenced her in sports and held back giving her an award for it at a moment when she thought she deserved it, because he
Mhm.
probably felt that she needed the discipline of just waiting and paying your dues. So
Mhm.
that was what I found, that people got these lessons from
Mhm.
these teachers that they didn't necessarily at the time get, but
Yes.
later on they realized, wow, I have something a little deeper in here. And when I think about it, I remember, I think I discovered it with Mr. or Miss So and so. So that's kind of what I've discovered. And I have to tell you, there were times where I was a little teary. Lorraine Toussaint talks about a teacher who was really horrible to her. And then another teacher who was great. And she said she went from toxic to tonic. And I
Mm.
thought, wow, that's amazing. So just so many great stories. And I was just so thrilled to talk to all of these folks.
No, I mean, it's a book full of gems. And I want to encourage the audience, if you all have questions for Miss Roberts, we have her for a short period of time. So I want to make sure that you get your questions in. But there are so many. It's funny because the idea of a teacher kind of checking that cockiness. I
Hmm.
remember realizing really early on that I was gifted when it came to writing. I was not in math and science, so I was you find something
That's
you're
the
good
other side of the brain. So,
at.
okay, got it. The
You
creativity
lean,
side.
you
Okay.
lean into that, right?
Yeah.
I'm good over here, so I'm going to lean into it. And my teacher, Mr. Williams, he would grade me so hard. And I remember I went to him afterwards and I was like, well, this would be fine. Another student would have gotten an A for this. And he said, that's not you. You can do better, so you
You
will do
can do
better.
better.
And he was so hard on me, but oh
And that was a thing that I found. Some people said that. Melody Hobson talked about a teacher who was hard on her. And she said, some people will read this and think this teacher was almost sort of abusive towards you in terms of how she was withholding of some of her praise. But
yes.
Melody said it taught me grit. And she
Mhm.
knew that I could handle it. And it
Yeah.
sounds like your teacher knew that you could do better.
He did, and he pushed me forward. So, like I said, there's so many amazing gems in this book, but one of my favorite, another one of my sheroes, Octavia Spencer.
Oh,
She has this I guess this lesson or this theory that her teacher shared with her that was the lesson of reaching for the lowest branch on the tallest tree, and that just
mm,
that was something that a lot of these lessons we know, but they're put in special ways. But
right.
that was something that was totally different, and so I wanted to just ask you your perspective on that. That's one of my favorites from the book.
Well, I first of all, Octavia's gotten to be a friend. I've interviewed her a few times now, and she's so lovely. And she was just giddy. And that was one of the things I found so interesting when I asked people, and I was DMing people, texting people, bumped into Jimmy Allen, the singer at Good Morning America, and just said, I'm doing this book. And everybody lit up. So
Mhm,
everybody initially just said, I would love to do this. I would love to honor a teacher. When Octavia talked about that, and she talked about her love for learning as a child and
mhm,
how she revered teachers. And that's one of the things I also want to highlight because this is a reminder of how we looked at teachers, at least so many of us growing up, and maybe we've lost a little bit of that and need to come back to it. But
mhm,
she revered her teacher. So when one of the teachers said to her, we all need to think about our comportment and how we bring ourselves. And Octavia is a great example. And she went, oh, that's me. And she's this kid, right? Like
mhm.
7 years old. And this teacher just actually saw something special in her, but also encouraged her to reach a little higher. And yes, maybe you can't go for the tallest, but you go for the lowest branch on the tallest tree, which means you're going to keep trying to reach higher and higher and higher. And I thought, wow, just these little lessons as a kid. And often teachers, this is the beauty of all of this too, I think, because we can have this conversation. Teachers don't always know that they're doing that and inspiring. They're just doing what comes naturally to them.
Mhm.
And they're not thinking, let me inspire her because she may go on to be an Oscar winning actress. Let me inspire him because he may go on to be a CEO in the case of Ken Chenault. They're just thinking that I see something that you can do and be better at, and I want to help you get there. And
Mhm.
then later, of course, some of these teachers have learned that they have inspired captains of industry, women who are just killing it now on Wall Street.
Mhm.
All of these great, great people look back oftentimes to education, teachers,
Absolutely.
educators, librarians, teachers.
It's so many people have done that, and I think that's the beautiful part is these teachers did not do this.
Mm.
They weren't trying to get this praise and these accolades. It came
Yeah.
naturally because of work they did years later.
Hmm.
Those seeds, came to just blossomed, and people are always so thankful of that. I want to ask you this because taking a little bit of a pivot because we're celebrating teachers and talking about them, but we know that teachers are woefully underpaid and often unappreciated. And I remember talking to when my children were in school, teachers that would not have the supplies or
Hmm. Hmm.
just the resources that they need.
Hmm.
And we know that so many teachers go above and beyond. I think if you
Right.
really most teachers that are there because they love what they do go above and beyond what
Yeah.
they're given, what they're provided with.
Yeah.
And so how do you think that we can support teachers more?
Well, I think that's such a good, it's a critical question. Number one, I should also say to you that some of the proceeds of this book I am giving to Donors Choose, which is an organization that provides resources to teachers, in particularly in areas where they may not have access to the types of resources that they need. I think more than anything else, first of all, we will have this conversation. I'm hoping this book will spark a conversation amongst people everywhere to talk about the teachers who are teaching their children or who taught them or who they may even be in classes with now. I think that conversation is critical. I think actually going to teachers, many of the folks I talked to said, Christy Turlington Burns said, wow, I looked up my teacher and she's still down in Miami and she's doing this women in, I want to reach out and find her and tell her thank you. So I
Mhm.
think that this big thank you, you know how when we see service members, men and women of the service, and we say thank you
Yeah,
for your service, we
absolutely.
certainly can't compare to that because of what they do, but I think we should all start saying thank you for your work to the
Mhm.
teachers. So I think we need to thank them. I think we need to, as parents, particularly, you know, folks like you who talked about now seeing it in a different way, to really get involved in your children's schools and to let the teachers know that you're supporting them.
Mhm.
Let them know that you're there. You know, we know in a lot of very well established and wealthy school districts, we have parents and committees and auctions and things like that where they raise a lot of money. But
Mhm.
oftentimes in challenging school districts, they don't really have that kind of
Right.
support. So
Mhm.
we need to give them the support. I think even if parents got together and just in one classroom raise some money for the teachers to do whatever, they just need to feel the support and that
Mhm.
parents are there, not just criticizing them all the time, but actually holding them up and saying, I appreciate what you're doing for my child. And I
Mhm.
think that is at least a start to a change in this country.
No, I love that. I love just being thankful. Like just
Yeah,
because sometimes I think people that do jobs like that, they're not monetarily motivated most of the time. They
yeah,
really are doing it because they care, and just
yeah,
hearing that your work is appreciated sometimes
yeah.
is enough to keep them moving forward.
Yeah, because they go into their own pockets, and many of them at the beginning of the year to you know, add up their supplies, and
Mhm.
you know they're in the hole because they don't make a lot of money. So I think that they really are people who are just, I mean, I just think just angels in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, angels
No,
on earth.
absolutely. I thought that word came to me when I was preparing for this interview. I want to get a few of the questions from our
Yes,
audience.
yes.
Portia Monique asked, Deborah, what are a couple more of your favorite lessons from the book?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know, don't get me started because I can just go on and on. But you know, I think I mentioned a few of them already. But I think Rachel Ray actually had an interesting point because she didn't speak so much about her teacher, but as much as about her grandfather. Because
Mhm.
she said lessons can also come not just in the school, but he would get her ready for school. He
Mhm.
would give her pep talks as she was going to school. So a lot of her lessons came before and after she came went to school from her grandfather. So
Mhm.
that was one. As I said, Lorraine Toussaint talking about having, you know, a negative experience and balanced by a positive one. Spike Lee talking about how he became a filmmaker in a way with his professor,
Mhm.
who one summer when things were really just kind of like, you know, rough in the country and a lot of things were going on, said, go out there and make a film. And there was a blackout in New York and he made, and so he talked about how that sort of set him on his path. So that was, I mean, I have to tell you, they're like children to me, all these stories. They're just like such, I love them all. And what I loved most is that once I started talking to these folks, whether it was Ava DuVernay or whether it was Brooke Shields, there was like the child in them came out. Suddenly, you know, they would say, I only have 20 minutes, so we'll just do, and they just kept talking because they reached back to a time that they really, I think, cherished. And they just felt so comfortable sharing what this was. And I think and I hope that people will get that. They will enjoy that trip down memory lane and maybe inspire you to go on and try to, you know, elevate teachers too. So there
Mhm.
are a lot of great stories and, you know, I can't wait for you all to pick it up and read them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to ask you one last question. And then if we have any more, I know we have another one from
Yes,
an
happy to
audience
answer
member.
questions.
But one of the things that I'm, we have to say when you're talking about teachers, the landscape of our culture is so different now, right? And
Yes.
so we
Yeah.
just went through a pandemic where teachers
Mm-hmm.
were, I saw teachers online reading to their
Mm-hmm.
students, just trying to
Mm-hmm.
to stay connected. But now we continue to hear so many school shootings and
Yes.
violence
Yeah.
happening
Yeah.
at schools. And I can't imagine, we know that teachers are already dealing with the fact that they're under resourced.
Right. Right.
To think that there was actually a news story of a teacher that gave her life protecting her students, and it broke my heart, but
Mm-hmm.
it was beautiful in a painful way. Because
Mm.
we see that these teachers are actually taking the position of guardians and they're
Yes. Yes.
protectors,
Yes.
for our children. And so I do want to ask you, what do you have to say about just the fact that now teachers are not only teaching, but they're protecting, and their
Yeah.
lives are often in danger trying to protect children. It's just a very
Yeah.
unfortunate and sad situation, but it's also one that we have to address and be real about.
Right. And in some parts of the country, you have legislators who are saying they should be packing heat. Teachers should
Right.
be coming to, they
Right.
should be armed. I think we are asking way too much of teachers. And I think that the exhaustion factor is probably just building because we are. And of course, the stress of living in this world that we all are dealing with gun violence and, injustices and so forth. I think it's a very difficult question. And I think it's something that is very, hard to to cure and to take care of very quickly. But I
Mhm.
do believe that as citizens, as parents, if we just sort of come together and support teachers and get involved, we
Yeah.
have to get involved with the school boards and even to some degree the local and state legislators who are, trying to come up with solutions. We need to give some very common sense solutions to these ideas too, so that we can support teachers because we're just, for the most part, I think people kind of kick back now and
Mhm.
just sort of let the schools. I mean, think about the parents who are just just in very unruly ways, demanding that teachers open the doors and teach their kids during the height of the pandemic, not thinking about the safety of the teachers. And of
Mhm.
course, that was a very difficult balancing act, but I think we do have to think about them. And I think it's very difficult. I'm not quite sure what the answer is in this climate that we're in, but
Mhm.
I do believe that showing support and showing up and trying to get involved in our local communities and our state, legislature, I think that will at least help to put some voices of reason out there to
Right.
try to give teachers some support that they need.
Well, I would.
Somebody wanted to know if there were any stories that didn't make the cut that I wish I had included. I
Mhm.
would say that I didn't leave anything on the cutting room floor. I wanted to include more, but what was frustrating was that I did it in such a very short amount of time that there were people, Magic and Cookie Johnson, had said, "Oh my gosh, we want to participate. Let me know." But they were busy and they were, vacation time in the summer, and so we couldn't connect to do it. And at a certain point, I had a cutoff point, so that was frustrating. There were a number of people like that who I had run into who had said, "Let me get back with you. I definitely want to do this."
Mhm.
But we ran out of time. Whoopi Goldberg here at ABC, she was on vacation, and then she was like, "Okay, yeah, but I said, my deadline." So more than anything else, there were people who I tried to get, and I just couldn't get because I didn't have the time. But I
Volume two, volume two, Deborah.
That's
We
it.
can do
That's it.
volume two.
Exactly.
I think that for Whoopi Goldberg and Magic and Cookie, we can definitely press upon your agent
Oh
to
my,
put out a volume.
exactly. Well, Cookie said, just let me know next time. So, okay, I said, okay, maybe volume two. And somebody's asking about the impact that I hope the writing will have on future generations. Oh my gosh, you asked such a great question because so many, you talk about writing, Crystal, and I just think that that is sort of a lost art in some ways because kids, first of all, they're not even learning how to write in cursive. They're not learning really how to write, period. They're typing and doing everything. They're getting auto check and spell check. So I think that I hope that that just sort of promoting groups like yours, promoting reading, promoting people to actually go deep and to think about what it is
Mhm.
to write and to take in the words and the history and to think philosophically about the world. I hope we can inspire kids to look beyond just sort of the quick fix that they find on their phones, the Google headlines, and to actually start reading and writing more. That's my hope.
Absolutely. Well, I want to ask you a question. Like I said, this is a Sisters with Superpowers book club, and we have a program here at Rolling Out that basically supports Sisters with Superpowers. And I always ask women that we celebrate and honor, and you're one that we are definitely doing with the celebration of your book. But what do you feel like is your superpower as you have
Oh,
this illustrious career that we,
oh.
are so in awe of, and so many of us, are inspired by you? What is Deborah's superpower?
Oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about it, and I might change my mind later. But I think my superpower is curiosity and compassion. I was out for a run this morning in the park, and I was trying to push myself because I was traveling the last couple of days. I hadn't gotten out for a run, and I was pushing myself, but yet I was like checking out all the beautiful flowers and the blooms, and I was stopping myself and taking pictures. And I thought, first of all, I've got to just take this in and breathe, right? So
Mhm.
I think that for me, I like to try to impart that to other people, to be curious, to really want to take in your world. I think
Mhm.
that is something that I do. I just naturally do when I go and do interviews and I'm talking to people. And when the interview subject who might be talking about something that was very painful will say, "Wow, you put me at ease. I can't believe how easy it was to talk about that or how pleased I was to share this very difficult story." It says to me that I think, I hope, I pray that I have a gift for, encouraging people to just sort of, with my compassion and
Mhm.
encouraging people to just sort of breathe, take things in, let things go. So I don't know. I think, if anything, I think it's connection. Maybe it's connection, compassion, curiosity, all of those things that build into wanting to be, I think, warmer, closer people.
I love that. Curiosity, compassion, and connection. Perfect.
Oh, the
Perfect.
three C's. I like that. Thank you. I didn't even realize I was branding it.
Yes,
I
you
like it.
did. Well, before we let you out of here, please let our readers know where they can pick up. I have my advanced copy right here,
Yes,
but
yes,
where
yes,
they can pick up a copy and also a little bit more about the organization that, yes.
yes. First of all, they can pick up a copy May 2nd. You can pre-order now. You can pre-order anywhere that they sell books, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, or even just small bookstores. I imagine you can do that too. You can go online. But the book comes out in less than 2 weeks, 11 days. I'm sorry, 13 days, 13 days, because 2 weeks from yesterday. So you can get it at any bookstore. And I think you might even find it, maybe a friend of mine who is connected to Airport, Hudson News Books, says that they probably will carry it. So
Nice.
anywhere that books are sold, I would say look for it. Lessons Learned and Cherished, the teacher who changed my life. And I think that if you can't, for whatever reason, get to pre-order, you have a very short amount of time now to be able to pick it up May 2nd. And it's Teacher Appreciation Week that's coming, like right after that.
Nice.
It's graduation. So, I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and sell. Pick up a couple, get one for yourself, get one for a friend, get one for your teacher or your child's teacher or someone in your life who might be a teacher who loves teachers. I really do see it as a love letter to teachers and a reminder to us of what treasures they are. Teachers are treasures.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being our premier guest here at Rolling Out on the Sisters with
Uh,
Superpowers Book Club. I've enjoyed this conversation so much. We're going to have more from this on the website, so we'll make sure to do that. And I want to encourage you all, as another author, to pre-order because we
yes.
want this book to be a bestseller. We want it to come out as a
Yes.
bestseller. So make sure
Yes.
you get those pre-orders in so you can support. And definitely before the school year ends, get a copy for your favorite teacher.
And Jackie, it is available in Canada, I'm sure. So please just look for it in Canada. We'll make
Thank you,
sure.
thank you so much, Deborah, and we wish you so much success. We hope you'll come
Thank
back
you.
with volume 2.
I would love it. And it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Have a
Thank
good day,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
All right. Thank you all so much for tuning in for our premiere session of our Sisters with Superpowers book club. We have an amazing author coming in May. Please stay tuned for more information. We're going to make this a community where people can tune in and have conversation, engagement with authors and get amazing conversation. I feel like literature is one of the gems of our culture that we need to celebrate. And so it's my pleasure and my honor to be your host and to bring to you some of today's most influential and celebrated authors. I want to wish you guys a successful week, a productive week, and we will see you right back here with Sisters with Superpowers next month for an amazing conversation with another amazing author. Have a great one. Bye-bye.